So the first Apple HomePod was a cult classic because it was genuinely a great sounding speaker. Now, Apple did an update of the HomePod for a few years, and for a while getting a HomePod was rather difficult. But now we have the HomePod Gen 2, which actually has less tweeters than its predecessors. Now, before we can actually see how the HomePod Gen 2 stacks up to the likes of the Sonos Era 300, let's see what the HomePod Gen 2 is all about. Regarding pricing, the HomePod Gen 2 has a retail price of $300. Not terrible if you ask me for this speaker, but given that this is an Apple speaker, I don't expect the speaker to go on sale all that often, and if it does go on sale, I don't expect it to go on sale by much. Nonetheless, if you want to pick this speaker up, it'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, pick up a Big Head approved hat. It helps the unsponsored and unbiased reviews coming. We've got trucker hats and snapbacks. So for starters, I am going to have to point out that this speaker is meant to be used with an iPhone. You're going to need an iPhone to set up the speaker and hook it up to Wi-Fi. Now, even though this speaker does have Bluetooth, this is a Wi-Fi first speaker and you're supposed to use AirPlay to stream music to it. Now, if you're an Android user, there is a roundabout way to get AirPlay to work on your phone, but for the best experience, I highly recommend that if you plan on getting a HomePod, you better have an iPhone. But in general, I'm not a fan of this walled garden approach for speakers, and this is something that I mentioned in my Sonos videos in the past. But given that this is Apple, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. Now, since this is a Wi-Fi first speaker, one of the things that you want to make sure when you place the speaker is that it has a solid Wi-Fi connection. If not, you're gonna have a bad time. Now, the cool thing about this speaker being a Wi-Fi first speaker and having AirPlay is that if you're connected to the same Wi-Fi network as the speaker, you're going to be able to stream music to it from anywhere around the house, and range is not going to be an issue. The drawback is if you want to share this speaker with someone, as in you want to let somebody else DJ, you're going to have to share your Wi-Fi password. And this is why I just want Bluetooth on the HomePod. Not only so that you can more easily use this speaker with a non-Apple device, it also allows you to share this speaker without having to give out your Wi-Fi password to everybody. Now, since we're on the topic of connectivity, I do have to point out that this speaker does not have an audio jack, so you cannot use this speaker with a wired connection. You can only use the HomePod Gen 2 wirelessly. Now, when it comes to the overall design of the speaker, the HomePod has a mostly fabric wrap body with a touchpad up top. But something that I did notice is that if you squeeze the speaker too much, its fabric body does flex a little bit. But in general, the HomePod is generally small. It's got a height of 6.6 inches and a diameter of 5.6 inches, and it weighs in at 5.2 pounds. So placing the speaker is pretty easy. The only thing that I don't like is that the power cable that comes included with the speaker is a little short. Now, when it comes to placing the speaker, since this is a 360-degree speaker, ideally you want to place the speaker in the center of the room. However, if you were to place the HomePod up against the wall or in a corner, it's going to use its surfaces to its advantage and is going to bounce sound off of those surfaces, and by doing so, it's also going to amplify its sound as well. Now, when it comes to controlling your music, there's a large touchpad up top, and here you can tap, double tap, and triple tap to play and pause your music, and you can skip through your music, and if you press on the plus and minus, you can adjust your music volume. Or you can always just ask Siri to do all of that for you. But one cool feature that I do want to talk about here is handoff. Basically, if you have your iPhone and you move it super close to your HomePod, the HomePod is just going to automatically start playing whatever's on your phone. My only critique here is that I do feel that handoff is a little too sensitive, because on multiple occasions, if I'm just walking past the HomePod, and then the HomePod is just going to automatically start playing whatever random video I'm watching. But with all of that out of the way, we can start talking about how this speaker actually sounds. Regarding speaker setups, the HomePod Gen 2 has an upward firing woofer and a total of 5 tweeters going all around the speaker. And this is actually 2 less tweeters than the original HomePod. However, I do have to point out that due to the speaker's woofer placement, the HomePod Gen 2 does have a surprising amount of physicality in its bass all on its own. The HomePod really likes to just rattle whatever table it's sitting on. But now we're going to jump into the sound test. And now I know this isn't an apples to apples comparison, but I do feel that it's a fair comparison price-wise and size-wise. Now, first off, we have the Marshall Middleton, which is also a 360-degree speaker, but this speaker has dual passive radiators, dual woofers, and dual tweeters. And then we have the JBL Extreme 3, which has dual front-mounted firing woofers, dual front-mounted firing tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides.
I never thought I'd feel like this. Yeah. I never thought I'd feel like this. Ooh, never thought I could. I never thought I'd be on my shit, be on my. I'm spending my time in love like I should, and almost struggling. I never thought I'd feel like this.
So sound quality wise, I really like how the HomePod Gen 2 sounds. It sounds very open and it sounds very balanced. Now, even though with the Extreme 3 has really good instrument separation, its highs are a little too overemphasized, and even though the Marshall Middleton also sounds great, it doesn't sound as concentrated as the HomePod Gen 2. But with the HomePod Gen 2, the main takeaway with this speaker is that it sounds very open and it has a decent amount of physicality all on its own. And this great instrument separation and openness is noticeable whether you're listening to Dolby Atmos content or not. Now, what Dolby Atmos is, instead of your music coming out of the left side and the right side of your speaker and all of the sound just being on one single plane, Dolby Atmos gives your music a sense of verticality to it, making it sound more open. However, everything doesn't automatically have Dolby Atmos support, but that doesn't change the fact that this is just a great sounding speaker, whether you're listening to Dolby Atmos content or not. But then there's the max volume performance of this speaker. Now, the HomePod gets decently loud for its size and is going to have no problem filling a small or medium-sized room with sound. But this speaker is going to struggle to fill a large room with sound all on its own. But with all that being said, the HomePod Gen 2 is a great sounding speaker that's going to do very well in a small or medium-sized room. Personally, I love how open this speaker sounds. I love that the speaker has a decent amount of physicality all on its own, and I also really like that the speaker uses its surrounding surfaces to its advantage. The only thing to keep in mind is this is a Wi-Fi first speaker and is meant to be used with an iPhone. If you're an Android user, using the speaker isn't as simple as it should be. But if you're an iPhone user just looking for an easy way to enjoy your music, the HomePod is a safe bet that just works. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.